I stopped doing all that, which was really hard because I thought action leads to results. But then I learned, well, aligned action leads to better results.
If you got something, let it rip.
I'm never going to do this again.
Everybody grapples with this idea that you're really a fraud.
Like, I'm alive.
And that's when it clicked with me. And I thought, these are not superheroes. These are just men that can do super things.
This is Matt Del Negro, and you are listening to the new stripped down 10,000 No's. Happy New Year, guys. Today's episode is pulled from one of our 10,000 No's Insiders Community monthly VIP guest Zooms, industry Zoom with Wendy Braun. She is an actor. She is also a mentor to actors. She's become a dynamic entrepreneur. She's doing something not unlike what I'm doing here with 10,000 No's. Wendy and I had such a good conversation that she's going to be in 2 episodes. The other one's coming out in a few weeks. But this one is really focused on what lights us up. How do we make a conscious choice to follow the things that light us up rather than our should-do list? We also get into focus and turning off your phone. And as the title suggests, the power of pausing. At one point, we get into the topic of this podcast. And at the time, you'll actually hear me talking about how I had shut down the podcast. We were still doing the 10,000 No's Insiders Community. That's why we were having this conversation. But at the time, I didn't know if or when or how I was going to bring this podcast back. And one of the things I said was the fact that I got sidetracked with the video aspect, and the YouTube was kind of bogging me down. Ironically, some of you are watching this today because it is on YouTube. Now, albeit it's very raw. That is just to show you that the things we talked about in this episode, they are fluid. And part of the idea of what we talked about is being open to whatever lights you up. And at the time we had this conversation, which was, I believe, in May, I didn't want to do a video aspect of the podcast. Now I do, but I'm doing it in a different, more raw way. So if you prefer to watch this instead of listening, you want to watch any of these episodes, just go to our YouTube channel, 10,000 No's, and hit the subscribe button, and you'll get all of these episodes in a video format. For now, here is Wendy Braun.
What we do here is go back.
So I definitely had a moment where I was like, all this doing, all this taking massive action, which I grew up learning, like it's really a masculine approach of like, you just need to hustle more. You need to work harder. I stopped doing all that, which was really hard because I thought action leads to results. But then I learned, well, aligned action leads to better results. So the first thing I did, which is a doing, was to stop all the doing.
Yeah.
So even though that sounds like, I know, but then what'd you do? Well, the first was to acknowledge that when I'm taking action from a place of, lack and doubt and frustration, which I think we get to at different stages, like if you keep doing something and it's not lighting you up anymore. And as Matt and I had talked about too, of like other things in our businesses, that I just have to stop the way it's going because this is not working. Right. So I did stop all the doing. And then I really, and that took a practice. Like I sort of made a list, and people can do this in the helping you stop the doing, is you sort of make a list of all like your should do list. Like, oh, I should start a podcast, or I should create more content, or that should do list that feels really heavy. Like for anyone here, it's May. If you made a list of like what you're going to do in this year in January, and there's things on that list you haven't even started, to me, that's a should do. That's your mental mind saying, well, if I don't create my own content, then I'm not going to ever make it. But it's not lighting me up, but I should do that. It's why it's not your path,
You know what's funny about that? I'm just, because Wendy and I spoke about my podcast, and it's been paused for a long time. And I'm actually right behind my screen is my big, I have a big cork board where I got really crazy. I was like, I'm going to bring it back starting in March 6th. We're now in the beginning of May. I haven't done it. And one of the things is I've been not doing it has opened me up. I've been doing a lot of developing of scripts. I've been doing a lot of other things that I think are maybe like bigger logs on the fire. I still do the podcast, but when you say about the should list, one of the things when I kind of think through the podcast that probably derailed me a little bit was everybody's like, well, if you really want to grow it, you got to put it on YouTube because YouTube's got video people. And so I for whatever reason, maybe it's something you eventually get over, but like, I like, even when I would do the solo ones, I don't want to do a solo one into camera. It's not that I'm camera shy, but when I'm in that podcast mode, I love being anonymous and I love getting on the mic and riffing, but I don't want a camera in my face. And I think I'm more open and it's more enjoyable. The YouTube thing, it's like, well, YouTube, but then if you're doing it on YouTube, well, what's the algorithm and how do you do it? And how do you list it? And then I'm like, SEO. And I just get crushed and then nothing happens. You know? So,
and so I think like, you know, some people would say, well, figure it out and just do it. I think the stepping back of like, what do I really want? How can I do it in a way that fuels me? Like maybe it is finding someone who does that. It's also writing out stuff I hate doing. It's like, I am not figuring out the algorithm on YouTube. I love doing my podcast, but I am not. That is something I don't want to figure out. I don't want to do that. But there are people who love doing that. So you can, you know, it's kind of like you step back and you just go, here's a sort of a simple tool that I like to use. Wouldn't it be nice if, oh, I have goosebumps. Wouldn't it be nice if, and then Matt or any of you, whatever you want, that the stuff you don't want to do, that gets figured out. Wouldn't it be nice if I brought my podcast back in a way that was even more rewarding than last time? And wouldn't it be nice if the right people found their way to me? And that's like, maybe I'm going after them or maybe they find me, right? Of, you know, I have so many resources and, you know, there's so many synergistic ways, synchronicitous ways that this part that I don't want to do that's stopping me can get figured out. I don't have to be in charge of it. Wouldn't it be nice if the right people found their way to me and the algorithm thing and the YouTube thing just worked itself out? And then you ask yourself, would I then want to? Like, it's not about like not doing anything. It's also about figuring out the stuff that feels so heavy. Can I just kind of hand it over, however you want to talk about it, but kind of to the universe to figure out for a little while I figure out my why of why I want to go back to it. And then I think, Matt, the other piece of it, maybe it's funny that you have that. Does it feel like it's looming over you now? Because when you have that goal and then it says March, do you ever sit down and be like, and like, is that affecting your energy of like, oh, it's May? Like, are you like, I suck because I have this date, or maybe you don't?
I flip-flop because part of me goes, well, I've also developed this script that's going to be a feature film that's going to be the best role I've ever played. I'm like, that wouldn't have happened probably if I was so busy with the other stuff. So that I have that mode, but then I do have the mode of it hanging over because people will DM me and they're like, hey, when's your podcast coming back? Remember us, we need it. Like, fuck.
Right.
You know, like you're like, oh, you're serving people. You kind of just like left them high and dry. And then there's also the thing of just, I would say, then there's the other thing, which is, it's not like I'm not creating content. I mean, we record these every week, and I got in the habit of putting them on as the Monday morsel. Now I have so much content that like, I got to go back through them and pull out the sections that I want to put on. Like when I do it, I have fun, but there's also 50 other things I'm doing. So I don't get to it. It's low on the priority list. I love that idea of, wouldn't it be nice? Because that's what happened with the summer intensive I told you about. We just sold out.
Look at what you're, yes.
Oh, it's so cool. But part of the reason that was able to happen is because, I guess, like you said, that guy found me and he has great equipment. He's got a base in the city. he does editing, he does the technical side.
Yes.
So I could just show up and be me. And so
Yes.
then it was easy. It was lighter for me to sell it because I'm
Yes.
very psyched about it. And I'm like, great, I don't have to do any of the shit that I don't want to do.
Yes. Yes.
And stuff that I
Yes.
like, so that came
Yes.
about, like it sold quicker than I anticipated. you know?
Okay. It's such a perfect example. And are you guys all getting this? And you guys can type in the chat anything you want. I love responding to chat and do it. I like doing all the things at once, but, Matt, I mean, it's such a perfect example. And maybe you did this on your walks. I know you take a lot of walks, like unconsciously, but what you basically said was, wouldn't it be nice if I could just show up and do the part I love and someone else took care of this, but everyone got served from this amazing place. And then you
Right.
realize as a creator, I don't have to do it all. You have your zone of genius. And really as actors and as coaches, our zone of genius is the front man, is the performing, is the speaking, is the teaching.
Yeah.
And when I have the same way too, I do lives every month in my membership, and the going through it to pick the piece that, you gotta, what's happening is you're growing, and that you have to have help with that, because you don't need to be doing that. But that's a whole other conversation. I think the point of this is when you sort of let go of the should do's, other things come. And I think what I would tell Matt, I would, when we're done, or whenever it feels good to you, actually, I shouldn't tell you. It always is when it feels good to you. But my suggestion would be to take off that date that's looming above you that you didn't make. This is why I actually don't love date goals, because it's very much, yes, it motivates us. And I have plenty of stuff that I'm like, it has to be done by this time. But a goal like that, where if it's past or whatever, you could literally replace that and just write the word near future. In the near future, I'm going to, and then it gives you this freedom to and look at all the other stuff you've created in the meantime. So I think as a nugget of wisdom I could impart on for any of you guys, whether, maybe none of you have a podcast, or you're doing your acting or writing or whatever it is the overarching thing is, how can I be kinder to myself today on my way to what I want? I have goals and dreams, and you have, big wants and ideas. But Matt, when you kind of stepped back from the should do of the podcast, you allowed all this next chapter of this to arise, and I think it's a daily practice of, not shooting on ourselves, really, if I can be so blunt. Yeah.
Not to keep harping on the podcast, but it was from the joy. And at a certain point, I got competitive with others. And then I was like, oh, what do I have to do I started to think about it. I still love the actual thing, but something shifted from, and I keep thinking I have to be like Rocky going back to the old gym and just get on the mic and riff again, because that's where it began. And that's where and get rid of all the bells and whistles that are cool, but make it more work to put on, and just be like, that's it. This is it. Because this is fun. And if people want to hear it, that intensive class, the irony is I went into the city and we shot all this really cool kind of high-tech promo materials, but it sold just from me doing little things in the selfies while I'm walking my dogs. So did we really need to do that? Or was that just like me just wanting to have some type of insurance policy, like, oh, this is a real thing? Whereas when it's just me walking my dogs and just saying like, hey, I'm going to do this thing, it feels like, well, that's too easy.
Well, you guys, I mean, it's such a great conversation, because I can see, if you choose to go back and do the podcast, the conversation is so what you're talking about, of a new season, and is it lighting you up, and like all of this. Someone told me the other day, I think it was yesterday, in my own group, was that Gen Z, I don't even know which generation is the youngest. Literally, I've been too far away from it. I asked my kids, I'm like, are you guys Gen Z? Like what? I don't even know. But anyway, Gen Z wants to bring back the flip phone, so that we all get off our phones and like actually, like, so you can't watch anything on a flip phone. You just call. And I was joking. I'm like, let's bring back the pager where all you were had, it was a number. And you're like, I don't even know who this is. And you got to go to a payphone to call them back. The point is, Matt, it's like, yes, everyone's like on YouTube and videos. And if you do a podcast, everyone has to, hair, makeup, lighting, and blah, blah. It's like, Matt's going to bring back the flip phone podcast of like, no, we're just doing this on the friggin' mic, and you're not going to, and you know what happens when we don't get to see you is we even listen even more. We hear
That's what
you,
I actually
right?
think.
And so like,
you
so,
kind of
yeah.
like that. That's what I was thinking the other day was, when I read a book, like we went away for spring break, my family and I had a book, and I love this book, and I just imagined the entire thing. And I thought, oh, this is like a book. Spielberg should make this into a movie. Like, he would be the perfect director for it. But my imagination of it was so, I loved it. And I think that's like kind of what happens with the podcast, because I generally like, think about Smartless. I love Smartless. I've never seen what their recording rooms look like in their houses, and I don't want to, because I have my own version of what it is ahead, and I don't want to ruin it. And it's like, it's a version of reading when you're listening to the podcast.
Yes.
And I think when even doing it, like, I realized in the pandemic, because when I was doing it originally on the microphone, everybody's like, oh, you really got to do it, on camera, it'll be much better. And then I started experimenting with cameras, blah, blah, blah. Pandemic hit, and it started being only over Zoom. And I was like, this is great. Now it's video.
Right,
I've got Kevin Bacon. I've got video snaps of him, which is better for selling it, whatever. Maybe on the other hand, if nobody's putting out any video, or if you're just, it's like you kind of, I think people open up in a different way,
And look, I guess you guys, we're all so focused on what everyone else is doing, and what started for you as a joy-filled thing. What hinders us all, I think, especially as we go to create, or even for those of you who are creating content, and then you're like, well, it didn't get as many likes or views. Like, there's all this like ego mind comparison BS that I guess is BS, and it's also really real, because people are either looking at it or not. So I can see how our minds would say, well, it does matter. Well, it doesn't. Yeah. But when you're creating from the joy of creating, and then all of a sudden you're logged up in so much of, I think, all of our transformation and breakthroughs comes first from the conscious awareness, even like this conversation we're having of, oh, I was creating from that place of love, and it was so much fun. And then I know what I'm doing. I'm just looking at what everyone else is doing. And I will guarantee you that the minute you look at what everyone else is doing, which is basically, if you pick up your phone anytime today and go on social media, you are looking at what everyone else is doing, right? Your mind will only compare you in the most negative way, most likely, right? So that then whatever you were doing is just not enough. I was thinking about it as we were going to talk today, Matt, and I was like, I grew up, in high school, we didn't have phones, right? And I thought about how often we go and look at what everyone else is doing. I'm like, now, if you were in high school and on your way from class to class, or let's make it a life thing, on your way from like next idea to next idea, like we're all in a school, and you're in your own school, and you're going to different classrooms to, work on your podcast or your content creation or your acting career. If you stopped in the cafeteria every time you were on your way and like checked to what everyone else was doing, you'd be like, okay, well, so yeah, oh no, I'm not even going to go. I shouldn't even bother. Like, I was thinking of this metaphor. I'm like, oh my God, if I stopped in the cafeteria to ask what everyone else was doing on my way to doing the thing that lit me up, which back then was like being in the variety shows and the dance and and the plays, and I checked to see if it was okay, or if they liked it, or if they liked me, I would have literally done nothing. And I feel like if we can be more mindful of that's what you're doing when you pick up that phone and you look at what everyone else is doing, that, have you ever tried to turn your phone off? Like literally off, not just on silent, but like off for like a 5-hour block of time. if you guys want to create more, turn it off, because it's really easy. Believe me, I write and I blog and I video and I'm a mom and I do all the things and I audition and I work. And it's really easy to like be writing and then not have an idea and then check the phone because you're like, what, right? We all do it. I do it myself, but I've been noticing just that. It's like, you could even put a Post-it note. It's like, would you like to go to the cafeteria and check how everyone else is doing? I know that's like a weird metaphor. Tell me if anyone's getting that.
No,
but
I totally
yeah.
follow, and I feel for our kids, I mean, we have kids about the same age, and I think, man, if I grew up with cameras in my face all the time, and it's a whole different thing that they're dealing with. It's a burden that they're dealing with. I think that it makes everybody just that much more self-conscious. All right, that is it. I hope this helped you in some way. If you're listening to this at the top of the year when it comes out and you're in that goal setting stage, hopefully this puts you on the right foot. Be sure to come back next week, the next few weeks. We've got a lot of good stuff coming for you. A reminder to all actors, we are doing our next Let's Shoot the Rehearsal weekend intensive on-camera retreat in New York City, February 17th and 18th. It is an awesome weekend. It's an artistic retreat. You're gonna bond with other actors. You're gonna get a New York experience, and you're gonna walk away with footage for your reel that's on par with a cool indie film. Check that out. If you're interested, we'll give you more information if you email us at info@10,000nos.com. If you're not already following me on Instagram, you can do so at Maddie Dell. I put out a bunch of reels about the Let's Shoot the Rehearsal and everything else, so check that out. If you are digging this show, again, thank you for listening or watching, however you came to us. If you like it, please give us a great review on Apple Podcasts, and please tell your friends and family about it. You can post about it on social media. We really appreciate it, and we will see you next week.